Before you take another sip of your morning coffee, you need to hear what scientists quietly published in one of the world's most prestigious medical journals, because it completely rewrites what most doctors have been telling patients for the last 2 decades. Researchers set out to study over 150 different foods and beverages. They were looking for a single answer: which one had the greatest measurable impact on the health of your gut? The findings stunned the research team. Not a single leafy vegetable made the top of that list. Not fermented foods, not the expensive probiotic supplement sitting in your refrigerator right now. The food with the single greatest positive impact on gut health was something the majority of adults over 60 consume every single morning, almost automatically, without giving it a second thought. It was the cup of coffee you may be holding in your hand right now. My name is Dr. Rachael Augustine, and I have spent decades working in internal medicine and geriatric health, focused specifically on how the aging body responds to the foods, beverages, and habits we repeat every single day. What I am going to share with you in this video is not based on wellness trends or social media headlines. Everything I am about to explain comes directly from peer-reviewed clinical research that took the scientific community by surprise, and that most seniors have never had explained to them in a way they could actually use. I built this channel for one reason: the conversation that can genuinely protect your health should never be locked behind a 10-minute clinic appointment. You deserve the full picture: the real biological mechanisms, the honest data, and the clinically grounded truth, not a simplified version handed to you on your way out the door. Today, I am walking you through 4 things, and I need you to stay for all 4, because each one connects directly to the next. Number 1. What is actually happening inside your gut right now, every morning, when coffee enters your body, and why the answer has nothing to do with what most people assume. Number 2. A discovery about decaffeinated coffee that overturns one of the most common assumptions in medicine, and that carries enormous implications for anyone over 60 who has been told to limit caffeine. Number 3. A direct biological pathway connecting your morning cup to your brain, your mood, and your memory. Once you understand this mechanism, you will never look at your morning routine the same way again. And number 4. This is the one most videos completely skip over: the specific situations where coffee genuinely does require caution, not because of fear, but because of real science. And the answer is not what most people expect. Stay with me through number 3 especially, because the mechanism I am going to walk you through changes the entire conversation. Let's start with understanding what is actually happening inside your gut right now. To understand why coffee topped that list of over 150 foods, you first need to understand what your gut actually is, because most people have a dramatically incomplete picture of it. Inside your intestinal tract right now, there are somewhere in the range of 100 trillion living microorganisms: bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microbial life forms, all coexisting in a layered, interconnected system that scientists now refer to as the gut microbiome. The simplest way to think about this is to picture an enormous living garden inside your digestive system. Some of those organisms are protective and beneficial, others are potentially harmful, and the balance between those two groups shapes an enormous amount of your overall health, your immune function, your inflammation levels, your digestion, and, as we will discuss shortly, your brain. What researchers at one of Europe's leading centers for gut science set out to discover was which everyday foods and drinks most powerfully shifted that balance in a positive direction. The study that answered that question was published in the journal Nature Microbiology in 2024. It analyzed data from over 22,000 individuals and tracked the relationship between their dietary habits and the composition of their gut microbiome. The scale of this study made its findings essentially impossible to dismiss. Coffee consumption was associated with positive changes in 115 separate species of gut bacteria. 115. No other food or beverage in the entire study came close to that number. 2 particular categories of beneficial bacteria showed especially significant increases in regular coffee drinkers. These bacterial types are associated with lower gut inflammation, stronger intestinal lining integrity, and reduced risk of certain gastrointestinal diseases. They essentially function as a stabilizing force within the gut ecosystem, crowding out microbial populations that drive chronic inflammation and cellular damage. Now here is what I want every viewer over 60 to sit with for a moment. A separate, large-scale observational study involving nearly 500,000 participants, followed over 7.5 years, found that individuals who drank coffee regularly had approximately half the risk of developing liver cancer compared to those who did not drink coffee, half. In addition, a 2024 publication in the International Journal of Cancer found that among people already diagnosed with colorectal cancer, those who continued drinking coffee showed meaningfully lower rates of disease recurrence and lower overall mortality than those who did not. I am not telling you coffee cures or prevents cancer. The science does not support that claim. What the science does support is that the biological pathway through which coffee exerts its effects, a pathway we are about to walk through together, is the same one researchers believe is connected to these findings, and that pathway has nothing to do with caffeine. Here's the real reason coffee does what it does. Most people, when they think about what makes coffee biologically active, think about caffeine. That assumption is understandable, but it turns out to be largely incorrect when it comes to gut health. Coffee is one of the most concentrated sources of compounds called polyphenols in the entire human diet. Polyphenols are a broad class of naturally occurring plant compounds. Think of them as protective molecules embedded within the coffee bean itself. They survive the roasting process, they survive brewing, and critically, and this is what becomes important in a moment, they survive the decaffeination process almost entirely intact. When you drink your morning coffee, those polyphenols travel through your stomach and your small intestine. The small intestine absorbs some of them, but a large portion continues further, arriving at your large intestine, your colon. This is where something remarkable happens. Specific bacterial species that live in the colon consume those polyphenols and, through the process of breaking them down, produce a class of smaller molecules called phenolic metabolites. These metabolites cross the intestinal wall, enter your bloodstream, and research suggests they carry anti-inflammatory properties, meaning they appear to actively reduce chronic low-grade inflammation in tissues throughout the body. Chronic low-grade inflammation, it is worth noting, is not the acute inflammation you experience when you sprain your ankle. It is a slower, quieter, persistent process that researchers now associate with a wide range of age-related conditions: cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, metabolic dysfunction, and certain cancers. The fact that a daily beverage appears to measurably dampen that process through a gut-based biological mechanism is genuinely significant. And now we get to something that surprised the clinical community: the truth about decaffeinated coffee. For years, the standard clinical assumption was this: caffeinated coffee provides biological benefits, and decaffeinated coffee provides the flavor without the benefit. That assumption turns out to be substantially inaccurate, and the correction matters enormously for a large portion of seniors. The decaffeination process removes somewhere between 97 and 99% of caffeine. But the polyphenols, the compounds we just established are doing the most important biological work, remain. They survive decaffeination at nearly the same concentration found in regular coffee, which means when decaffeinated coffee reaches your colon, the same beneficial bacteria are present, the same polyphenol breakdown occurs, and the same protective metabolites are produced. The absence of caffeine does not eliminate the gut benefit. The research data confirms this. The decaffeinated group in the large Cork study showed measurable improvements in memory and learning performance. Researchers attributed this not to caffeine, but to the polyphenol-driven gut-brain interaction, which brings us to the part of this video I need you to pay careful attention to. Before I walk you through what may be the most important mechanism in this entire video, the direct biological connection between your morning coffee and your brain, I want to pause for just a moment. If what you have heard so far surprises you, or if it directly contradicts advice you have received in the past, you are not alone. Thousands of adults over 60 have been given blanket guidance about coffee that this research simply does not support. What I am about to show you in the next section is the reason why. If you are watching this and you are not yet subscribed to this channel, I want to ask you to do that right now. Every day I publish videos like this one, grounded in clinical research, explained in plain language, focused entirely on the health of adults over 60. Subscribe now, tap the bell icon, and you will not miss a single one. And if you have a family member, a spouse, or a friend who drinks coffee and has ever been told to cut back, please share this video with them before you continue. It takes 10 seconds, and it may genuinely change a conversation they have with their doctor. Now, let us talk about your brain. The gut-brain connection nobody explained to you, running from the base of your brainstem all the way down through your chest, past your heart and lungs, and into the lining of your digestive system, is a nerve called the vagus nerve. It is one of the longest nerves in the human body, and for most of medical history, it was thought of primarily as a channel through which the brain sent signals down to the gut. Scientists now understand this was only half the picture. Approximately 80% of the signals traveling along the vagus nerve move in the opposite direction, upward from the gut to the brain. Your gut is not a passive organ waiting for instructions. It is continuously sending information upward that directly shapes your emotional state, your memory function, your stress response, and your cognitive clarity throughout the day. Now add this to that picture. Your body produces a neurochemical called serotonin, the compound most closely associated with mood stability, emotional well-being, and a sense of calm. The widespread assumption is that serotonin is produced primarily in the brain. The actual figure is striking. Approximately 90% of the body's serotonin is produced not in the brain, but in specialized cells lining the interior of the gut wall. And the bacterial populations in your gut directly influence how much serotonin those cells produce. This means the gut bacteria that coffee feeds, those 115 bacterial species, are part of a system that directly influences how much serotonin your body generates. Researchers have connected regular coffee consumption to measurable improvements in mood stability and reductions in anxiety, and a meaningful portion of that effect appears to run through this gut serotonin vagus pathway, not simply through caffeine's direct effect on the brain. For adults over 60, this connection deserves particular attention. Age-related shifts in gut microbiome composition are well documented. The bacterial diversity that most people carry in young adulthood diminishes over time. That shift has been linked in research to increased rates of depression, cognitive fogginess, and anxiety in older adults. The fact that a daily dietary habit appears to counteract some of that shift is a clinically meaningful finding. Now I want to talk about something that separates responsible health education from the kind of oversimplified content that does more harm than good. Not every person watching this video should be drinking more coffee. There are 4 specific circumstances in which the risk calculation genuinely changes, and I am going to be direct with you about each one. Number 1. Anyone living with chronic acid reflux, formerly diagnosed as gastroesophageal reflux disease, or a condition called Barrett's esophagus. Coffee has a documented effect on the lower esophageal sphincter, the valve that sits between your food pipe and your stomach. In some individuals, coffee causes that valve to relax, which allows stomach acid to move upward into the esophagus. For people with Barrett's esophagus, where the esophageal tissue has already undergone cellular changes from repeated acid exposure, that additional acid contact is something to avoid. If you have either of these diagnoses, this is a conversation to have with your gastroenterologist specifically about whether decaffeinated coffee might allow you to preserve some of the gut benefit while reducing the acid risk. Number 2. Individuals taking certain cardiac medications, specifically anticoagulants or medications used to regulate heart rhythm and rate. The liver metabolizes both caffeine and many of these medications through the same enzymatic pathways. Significant caffeine intake can alter how quickly those medications are processed, which can shift them outside their therapeutic range in either direction. If you are on these medications, this is not a reason to eliminate coffee without discussion, but it is a specific question to bring to your prescribing physician. Number 3. Anyone currently experiencing active gastrointestinal bleeding or anyone in recovery from gastrointestinal surgery. Coffee accelerates gastric acid production and increases the rate of movement through the digestive tract. In someone whose gut is healing from a bleed or a surgical procedure, that additional stimulation is medically contraindicated. This is a temporary caution in most cases, not a permanent restriction, but it is not a situation to manage without medical guidance. Number 4. Individuals with clinically diagnosed anxiety disorders, particularly those whose anxiety remains significantly symptomatic. Caffeine stimulates the release of cortisol and adrenaline from the adrenal glands. In a system that is not already in a heightened state of reactivity, this produces the familiar sense of alertness and focus. In someone whose stress response system is already chronically activated, that same hormonal surge can intensify anxiety rather than produce clarity. For this group, decaffeinated coffee may offer a practical pathway to retaining the gut benefit without the cortisol trigger. If you are in none of those 4 categories, and many of you watching are not, the current research makes a well-supported case that moderate, consistent coffee consumption is beneficial for your gut microbiome, your gut-brain communication, your mood, and potentially your long-term cognitive health. Let me bring this together with 5 practical, evidence-based recommendations that you can bring into your life starting tomorrow morning. Number 1. If you drink 1 to 3 cups of coffee daily and you do not fall into any of the 4 caution categories I described, the research supports continuing that habit. The polyphenol benefit is real, it is measurable, and it applies to both caffeinated and decaffeinated varieties. Number 2. If coffee triggers reflux or heartburn for you, your body is giving you specific information about how that valve between your esophagus and stomach responds to coffee. Consider raising the question with your doctor of whether decaffeinated coffee might allow you to maintain the microbiome benefit with less acid irritation. Number 3. If you were told at some point to stop drinking coffee entirely and the reason was general rather than tied to one of the specific conditions I outlined, bring this research to your next medical appointment. Ask your physician specifically which of those 4 risk categories applies to your situation. If none of them do, a blanket restriction may not reflect the current state of the evidence. Number 4. What you add to your coffee matters more than most people realize. A study involving 147,000 participants followed for over 12 years found that individuals who drank unsweetened coffee at 2 to 4 cups daily had a 16% lower risk of gastrointestinal disease. Those who added refined sugar or artificial sweeteners to their coffee showed that protective effect substantially reduced. The polyphenols remained, but the benefit did not. Black coffee, or coffee with minimal additives, preserves the biological pathway most effectively. Number 5, and this is the one the research is most emphatic about. The bacterial changes documented in these studies did not happen from a single cup on a single morning. They developed over weeks of consistent daily consumption. Regularity over time is what builds the benefit, not the size of any individual serving, not the quality of any single cup. Daily consistency is the mechanism. Before I go, I want to leave you with something that years of studying the relationship between daily habits and long-term health outcomes has reinforced for me repeatedly. The gut is not a passive system doing quiet, unglamorous work in the background of your life. It is a dynamic, responsive ecosystem, one that interacts with your immune system, your hormone production, your nervous system, and your brain every single day. And the choices you make consistently in the small daily rituals most people do not even think about are the choices that shape what that ecosystem looks like over time. What we now know about coffee, about the polyphenol pathway, about the microbiome response, about the gut-brain connection, tells us that one of the most ordinary habits of daily life for adults over 60 is doing something genuinely meaningful inside the body, something the research community itself did not fully understand until very recently. That is not a reason to be reckless. It is a reason to be informed. If this video gave you something useful, a mechanism you had never heard explained before, a question you now want to bring to your doctor, or simply a clearer picture of what your body is actually doing every morning, then this channel was built for you. Subscribe to Dr. Rachael Augustine's health tips right now. Every single week, I publish content built on the same foundation as this video: peer-reviewed research, plain language, and an honest commitment to giving adults over 60 the full clinical picture, not a simplified version, not a fear-based version, and not a false reassurance. The real information, every week. Tap the subscribe button. Tap the bell so you are notified the moment a new video goes live. And if someone you love has been navigating confusing or contradictory advice about their health, share this video with them today. That one action might be the most useful thing you do for them this week. I am Dr. Rachael Augustine. I will see you in the next video.